By special arrangement with United Artists Corporation, Magnetic Video Corporation is proud to offer the following special video presentation.
Yugi Hoshiguma is an Oni. Oni are a type of yokai. They are the strongest around, and Yugi is one of the strongest in all of Gensokyo. And sometimes, the GR hires her to do yard work as she has the strength of the strongest of goods engines, but she mainly does shunting as she can easily replace a tank engine. Today, Yugi was moving trucks in the harbor. She gave a mighty push and the trucks careened down the line and slammed into some buffers. Shiro saw this and went to see Yugi. "That was very irresponsible of you, Yugi-chan," scolded Shiro. Yugi felt slighted. "I feel like I'm not using my full potential working on your railway." Shiro was intrigued. "How so?" "If I had the strength to reverse the flow of rivers, flatten trees, and demolish buildings by stomping heavily, then why am I relegated to mere shunting?" complained Yugi. "I'm sure if you ask my controller, I'm sure she can let you pull a goods train," replied Shiro. "I suppose." She paused, then laughed. "After all, I am the strongest in Gensokyo." Shiro laughed too, but across the yard was Devereux, who had heard everything. "The strongest in Gensokyo, she says," he sneered. "I'll see about that." Yugi was on break and was enjoying some sake from her dish. Devereux used this chance to prove himself that he was stronger. So he began shunting trucks 2 by 2. He wanted to show her that he was stronger than an Oni. Across the yard were the 3 fairies of light, Sunny Milk, Luna Child, and Star Sapphire. They were watching Devereux carefully.
"Let's show the Pompous Loco what real strength is,"
chortled Sunny Milk.
"I don't know,"
said Luna Child, unsure of herself.
"Don't you think he might call in on us?" "I don't care,"
shouted Star Sapphire playfully.
"I want to pay him up for his arrogance."
So, while no one was looking around, the 3 fairies used wooden poles that they had found and worked to the brakes on the trucks so that way they were on. They even used the powers to break into the brake van and turn the handbrake. Once Devereux had stopped shunting trucks, they ran back and watched carefully. "Great," said Devereux, who was congratulating himself for shunting such a long train. "Now I can show that lousy Oni that I'm the strongest in Gensokyo." His driver uncoupled him to the train, and Devereux gave a great heave. But the train didn't move. He went to pull forwards, but the train wouldn't move. He lurched ahead and only heard the coupling groan. He soon heard laughter coming from behind. "I'll show you," he cried, and gave one great heave. The couplings were strained, and Devereux's constant surging had weakened them, especially in the one connecting Devereux to the first truck. Growled Devereux. He tried to give one more pull, then it happened. The coupling snapped, and Devereux shot forwards and ran into a siding that ended with a loose set of buffers leading into the Zanzu River. He smashed the buffers and landed on a barge. "Grease and oil!" he shouted. Then the 3 fairies of light showed themselves, and they guffawed at Devereux's failure to pull the train. "I'll tell the Hakurai Shrine Maiden," he threatened. "You'll see." Reimu Hakurai did come, and so did Remilia Scarlet, the vampire lolly controller who was in charge of the railway. "Devereux, I am disappointed in you, but I only wanted to show that baka Yugi that That's quite enough out of you," she scolded. "Miss Hoshiguma is a fine Oni. You're just a pompous twit. If anyone's the baka here, It's you. Devereux only grumbled under his breath as he was hoisted onto the breakdown train. At the end of the day, Yugi was preparing to head back to her home in former hell, when Shiro came by to see her off. "Sorry about Devereux earlier," said Shiro, having heard of what happened. "It was nothing, Shiro-san. From what I heard, he won't be trying to upstage me anymore. Hell, even Remilia gave me some fine sake for my troubles." "Well, you could say that there could only be one," chortled Shiro. The yokai locomotive laughed as the sun began to set on what was certainly an interesting day. It was autumn in Gensokyo. The leaves have changed color and have begun to fall. The leaves would often fall down on the track, and this was causing some problems. But from the way Hiroto was talking about it, it sounded like it was some really bad news. "Speed restrictions? It's disgraceful," he said. His driver argued with him. "The leaves make the rails slippery and it makes faster heavy trains not slow down in time." "But this is preposterous," Hiroto cried. "Is there any problems, Hiroto-kun?" Hiroto knew that voice. It was Remilia Scarlet. "Nidori told me about this leaves problem and I have put those restrictions in place until the season changes." Hiroto sighed. He knew he wasn't going to argue with the lolly and said, "Okay, sir." "That's a good little express engine," she said cutely. The shrine main Reimu Hakurai was tidying up the station close to her shrine. Cobol was shunting a line of trucks filled with donations and saw Reimu dumping leaves onto the line. He was very cross and went to see Reimu. "Miss Hakurai," he boomed. "What is it, Cobol?" she asked. "Don't you know that putting leaves on the track is dangerous? What if a train needed to stop?" Reimu rolled her eyes. What she didn't know was that leaves would get sucked in by the passing trains and get crushed, leaving behind an oily substance. This substance makes the wheels wet and slippery. Fine, whatever," Reimu conceded. "That's good to hear," said Cobol. Deep down, he knew from experience that Reimu and he preferred to be safe, especially after what had happened on that fateful charter train several New Years ago. Unfortunately, Reimu continued to push the leaves onto the track. Engines would come and go, and they had to be careful. They would toot angrily at her and try to reason with her, but it was no good. The engines had an indignation meeting at the sheds. "Disgraceful," said Hiroto. "Despicable," put in Kenta. "Distasteful," finished Ahiru. He usually never got to be with the bigger engines and enjoyed joining with them. "What are we to do with Reimu-chan?" said Hiroto. "We tried wishing. We tried talking to her. What else can we do?" Kenta said, unsure of what to do. That's when Shiro chuffed in. He had overheard what the other engines were talking about. "From everybody's experience here, I gather that Reimu is going to learn the hard way. Just like whenever one of us becomes arrogant. No one wanted to be reminded of their own misadventures of being puffed up in the smoke box, but they knew something was going to happen." The next day, Hiroto was running late. He whistled, "Boop, boop! I can't be late! I can't be late!" He had ignored the speed restrictions and came towards the Hakurai Shrine station much too fast. Hiroto's driver applied the brakes, but it was no good. Hiroto screeched past the platform. Leaves went everywhere. He surprised Reimu and slid past the platform. "I can't stop, he cried. Help! But there was a set of points. They were switched against him. Hiroto crashed onto the points and derailed violently. Shiro brought the breakdown train, and with him, the Scarlet Controller and the railway's chief mechanical engineer, Nidori Kawashiro. "You are going much too fast, Hiroto," scolded Remilia. "But sir, Reimu was dumping leaves all over the track." Reimu was standing by, and she blushed intensely. Nidori finished inspecting Hiroto. "His wheels have gone flat," she concluded. Remilia turned to the Miko. Well, she said. "Guess who's paying for Hiroto's new driving wheels?" Reimu felt awful. "At least he's, what are his wheels like?" "Pacific," replied Nidori. "Whatever," finished Remilia. "I think Reimu Hakurai learned her lesson. Don't you?" Every year there is a convention known as Reimu. People and doujin producers visit Gensokyo and come up with ideas for new doujins. Today, they were taking a rail tour on Gensokyo's railway. Shiro was having trouble starting his train. "Did you see him straining?" asked Kenta. "Just pathetic," grunted Hiroto. "He should give up and be preserved before it's too late." "Shut up!" burst out Hiro. "You're all just jealous. Shiro's better than any of you." "You're right, Hiro," said Cobol. "Shiro's old, but he'll surprise us all." "I've done it. We're off. I've done it. We're off," said Shiro as he got the train moving. Reimu and Marissa greeted the visitors at the Hakurei Shrine Station. Marissa was pleased with all the attention, but Reimu was less than happy about it. "Every goddamn year," she grumbled, "the doujin artists take our pictures and go home to make lewd pictures of us." Shiro sighed. "I hope they don't draw us like that," he hoped. Once the Reimu visitors stopped taking pictures of the Miko and the magician, they boarded their train, and Shiro tried his hardest to get the heavy train going. On the way home, the weather changed. Wind and rain buffeted Shiro, his sanding gear failed, his wheels slipped. His firewoman rode out in front, dropping sand onto the rails by hand. "Come on! Come on! Come on!" panted Shiro breathlessly, but there was worse to come. Before Shiro's driver could do anything, his wheels slipped fiercely again and again. With a shrieking crack, something broke and battered his frame. The Reimu goers gathered around while the two Kappas inspected the damage. "One of your crank pins broke," said his driver. "We have taken your side rods off, and now you have to run like a single. Can you get these?" His driver paused. "People? Home?" "I'll try," promised Shiro. To help Shiro, the couplings were loosened. Once Shiro started moving, the coaches moved like trucks. The first one started, then the second one, then the third. With the firewoman standing in front, the driver checked the regulator. It wasn't long until the train was moving nicely. "I've done it! I've done it!" puffed Shiro, his wheels spun with excitement. "Steady, boy," called his driver, checking the wheel slip. "Well done! You've got him! You've got him!" And she happily listened to Shiro's steady beat as he forged slowly forward. The convention goers were thrilled. Most had their heads out the windows, cheering Shiro on. The Scarlet Controller paced anxiously. Kenta was waiting with the special train. He was waiting as well. They heard a peep peep. Then battered, weary, but unbeaten, Shiro steamed in. The lolly vampire was angry and pointed to the clock, but the excited Reimu-ears swept her aside. They cheered Shiro, his driver, and his firewoman to the echo before rushing off to get to Kenta's train. He steamed away to another storm of cheers, but not before everyone knew Shiro's story. Shiro went thankfully to the shed, while Ichihiro and Cobol saw to it that he was left in peace. Hiroto and Akemi remained respectfully silent. Cyrano and her friend Devereux were hanging out around Hiroto's hill at night.
Are you sure this is okay?
Asked Devereux.
I'm sure this is fine,
said Cyrano reassuringly.
I'm going to start freezing the track. You grab the toboggan. If you say so,
replied Devereux. The next morning, the engines were getting ready. Cobol idled in the shed, waiting for his first order. "Come on, Cobol," said his driver. "We have to take a load of empties from the Meiling Shrine Station." "Alrighty then," replied Cobol. "Be careful, Cobol," warned Ichihiro. "The fares may be up to their old tricks again." "I'll keep that in mind." When Cobol went to the Meiling Shrine to pick up the trucks, Hiroto was there with the express. "I swear," he grumbled, "that hill is quite too cold for this season." "What do you mean?" asked Cobol from across the yard. "When I went over the hill." "Your hill?" joked Cobol. "Well, it doesn't matter. What matters is that there is frost on that hill, and I don't like it." Cobol then remembered. It must have been one of those fairies, he thought. The guard's whistle blew and Hiroto set off with his train. Cobol shunted the rest of the empty trucks and set off for his journey.
I don't like this, Cyrano-chan,
Said Deuse,
trains are starting to come over this hill. I'm sure they'll be fine.
replied Cyrano. Cyrano knew that the engines would be experienced enough to handle the icy rails, but what she didn't know was that she laid too thick of a layer of ice to be safe. The ice was also much too smooth. If an engine needed to stop, it wouldn't. Cobol rolled up the hill on the other side from where Cyrano was. "Alright, driver, careful,"
I know.
said his driver. After all, it was her profession to drive the locomotives. Cobol came up and over the summit and was heading down. The air became cold and his driver applied the brakes. Cobol didn't slow down. He skidded down the frosted rails. "Help! Help!" he cried. Deuse saw Cobol and the trucks rush down a hill.
I knew this was a bad idea.
She said.
Oh, relax. I'm sure he'll stop.
Cyrano assured. Cobol didn't stop. He was picking up speed. His driver braced herself as at the bottom of the hill was a curve. It wasn't sharp, but at Cobol's speed, he was problematic. Cobol screeched down. He shut his eyes as he careened down the bend and jumped the rails. Cyrano's face dropped.
Oh, shit!
But that wasn't the worst of her problems. Remilia Scarlet came, and when she heard that the track was iced over, she turned her attention to Cyrano. "You baka!" she yelled.
I'm so sorry!
Sobbed Cyrano. "You better be," growled the Scarlet Controller. Cyrano began to cry. Remilia continued to bark at her about how railways aren't for playing. Later that afternoon, Cobol brought the trucks and rested on the siding. That's when Ichihiro peeped by. "I heard about Cyrano," said Ichihiro. "Shame she has to clean out boiler sludge for a week." Cobol laughed. "From the way I heard, I guess the tomboyish daughter isn't too beloved right now." Ichihiro chuckled. "There's no one like Cyrano." Cobol couldn't have agreed more. It was a lovely morning in Gensokyo. It was just after breakfast when Remilia called over for Sakura. "Sakura?" beckoned the vampire lolly. "Yes, mistress? It's Hong Meiling's birthday tomorrow." Hong Meiling was the Scarlet Devil Mansion's gatekeeper. She usually tried to filter who comes in and out, but sometimes ends up falling asleep instead. Sakura hated this and would often use her throwing knives as a threat, or sometimes a punishment. "Mistress, what do you mean?" asked Sakura. "I mean I have something special for her. I just need one of the engines to bring it to the human village is all." "Remilia-sama! Using the railway for her own gain?" Sakura said, surprised. "It's only this once. It won't be ready until later." Ichihiro was shunting in the human village terminus yard. His scheduled trains to Yente were suspended due to a minor yokai incident in the bamboo forest of the Lost, and he was busy putting coaches into their place. The Scarlet Controller walked up to him whilst he was resting. "Good morning, Ichihiro," he said. "Good morning to you," he replied. "I need you to pick up something at the Moria Shrine." "What is it?" peeped Ichihiro. "It's a surprise," whispered Remilia. "It's for Meiling's birthday." "I'll get right to it," and Ichihiro puffed off in a hurry. Ichihiro trundled down the main line, wondering what the surprise would be. He tried guessing what the surprise was, that is, until his driver spoke up. "It has to be a pretty big surprise to be using railway resources," she said. That only made Ichihiro wonder more. Ichihiro pulled into the yard. It was Sanae Kochiya's turn to be station master for the day. "Are you here for the dragon over there?" she asked. Ichihiro thought she was talking utter nonsense until he saw from across the yard on a siding was a large Chinese dragon semi-permanently attached to a flatbed. "Guess I am," said Ichihiro in amazement. "Good, because Kaneko says we have no need for a big dragon here, and we celebrate the Shinto New Year, not Chinese." Ichihiro felt the difference in culture deeply. In no time at all, Ichihiro pulled the dragon over the main line. This isn't so bad, he said to himself. But every time an engine passed him, they gave his queer load odd looks. It seemed to create questions as he trundled down the line. At last, he reached the human village terminus yard. Remilia Scarlet was there with Sakura Izayoi and Hong Meiling. But Meiling looked confused. "It's not New Year's, is it?" she asked. No, it's for your birthday," clarified Remilia. They left Hong Meiling more confused. "Then why did you give me a dragon?" "Well, I thought, this is like giving a black man a KFC franchise for his birthday." "What's a black?" "Just enjoy it for what it is," she grumbled. "But all I'm saying is just because I'm trying, I spent gun money on that goddamn dragon. I had a fake yokai incident on that blue bastard's branch line so I could ship it to you using this god's forsaken railway." The yard became silent. Even passengers at the station were in disbelief. What Remilia had done was admit to using the railway for her own deeds. The silence was broken by Meiling giggling. Then she burst out laughing. She guffawed at the strange circumstances. The dragon? Remilia putting her job as controller on the line? Ichihiro's involvement? Of course! It was to be a great big joke. "This is the best gift ever," she said. "The dragon?" asked Ichihiro. "No, the skit you all put on," Meiling said. Remilia was most embarrassed. The next day, Nidori had to fill in for Remilia as she was suspended from her controller duties for 3 days. Even the other engines thought of it to be a big joke. "Funny that, Miss Scarlet," chortled Hiroto. "Yeah, to abuse her powers for a dragon," giggled Kenta. Even Cobol and Shiro thought it was funny. "To think he got suspended for our gatekeeper's enjoyment," said Cobol. Ichihiro could do nothing but to laugh it out with the other engines. Cobol is a diesel engine. He's mixed traffic too, as he can pull coaches and trucks. But he's special. Unlike the other engines like Chrysanthemum or Maybach, he is a diesel hydraulic, and the power is transmitted from his engines to his wheels using things called torque converters. He likes working on the railway, even if it does get a little difficult dealing with whatever problems the yokai of Gensokyo throw at him. However, it was getting late and Cobol had to stay in the station yard. "See you in the morning, Cobol," said his driver. "Good night," replied Cobol. Cobol fell promptly asleep. However, during the early morning, the ghost princess Yuko Sagiyuji got separated from Yomo Kampaku, her gardener. "This seems like a nice place," she thought. She entered the shed and smelt something. Cobol's driver left his lunch in Cobol's engine compartment and she climbed in. It wasn't long when she finished eating the food and started chewing on something else. Cobol's driver returned a few hours later. She started up his engine and went off to shunt some trucks. Cobol felt strange. Something was loose, but he didn't know what. He decided not to tell. He soon got an order to take a goods train to the Hakurai Shrine. It was coupled to the trucks, and he set off. Cobol's strangeness grew into stings, the stings grew into pains, and he began to strain. His driver was getting wary of the situation. "Your throttle is all the way up, and you can't seem to break 30, she said. "I think something's wrong with your transmission." Cobol felt a particularly strong pain. He groaned. The train became slower and slower. It felt like ages trying to reach the shrine. "I have to get there, I must, he wheezed. Cobol clagged down the line as his engine roared. At last, Cobol reached the station. He was uncoupled from the train and was parked onto a siding. The engine was shut off and he cooled down. His driver went to open the door to his engine compartment, and to her surprise was a dazed, oil-reeked, and miserable-looking Yuko. "What were you doing in there?" exclaimed the driver, but before she could speak, Yuko puked out bits of metal, some tubing, and lots of hydraulic fluid. Soon, the Hakuroi Shrine Station became a hub of activity. Ichihiro brought his 2 coaches. In them was Irin Yagakoro. She came to check on Yuko. Mayback came with a works train to take care of Cobol and his damaged engine. "Bust my buffers," said Ichihiro. "Is she going to be alright?" Irin didn't seem too worried. "Don't worry, she's going to be fine. She's a ghost, and all we need to do is just pump her stomach." Across the yard, some Kappas were inspecting Cobol. "Just send him to the works," one of them said. "He's fine to go." And Mayback shunted Cobol to the end of the works train. Ichihiro led the way on the main line, Mayback not too far behind. Ichihiro left for the Yentei branch line, and Mayback headed towards the Kappa Valley. "I heard about Yuko and what she did to your engine. Shame it ruined your transmission," said Mayback. "I'll be alright. I needed to go there anyway," replied Cobol. "Now we understand what lengths Yuko could go to satisfy her hunger." "Yeah, I understand," Cobol said. He knew what he meant. Whilst Cobol was away being mended, the 2 other diesel electrics, Mayback and Chrysanthemum, helped out by doing Cobol's work. But what about Yuko? Yuko Saguji returned home with a cross but caring-looking gardener and an ambulance bill from the Scarlet Controller. She now knows that it's not very tasteful to go and eat the other engines. Don't you think? Ichihiro is a tank engine. He used to work on what is known as JR West. Despite doing rural branch line work, he doesn't have any side plates or cow catchers, but him and his crew have their special ways even if animals or yokai stray onto the line. But Chrysanthemum thought his techniques were silly. She said that Ichihiro was afraid of getting hurt himself. "I am not," said Ichihiro indignantly. "You are. I don't have anything special and I'm not afraid. All I have to do is toot and they all get out of the way." "But they don't," said Ichihiro simply. "They would with me. Yokai always run if you toot and look 'em in the eye." "Even Oni?" "Even Oni," said Chrysanthemum confidently. Chrysanthemum never met an Oni, but she hurried away quite unconcerned. There was a level crossing. Humans waited behind gates to let her pass. She tooted at the said level crossing, and a Tengu halted while she went by. "Phew," she said. "It's easy. I just toot and they all stand aside. Alas, poor Ichihiro. I'm sorry he's frightened." At the next station, Ekishiki was waiting. "There's degenerate Oni on the line," she warned them crossly. "Just go along towards the bamboo forest." Chrysanthemum was excited. She thought, "I'll show Ichihiro how to manage Oni." Soika Ibuki wasn't really a fierce Oni, but this morning she was inebriated. Fujiwara no Moku had driven her away before she finished her sake and tried to get away from her booze. Soika escaped and wandered down the road, stumbled over a fence and rolled down a slope, and passed out. When she woke up, she was surprised. Her vision was blurred. This is a new kind of road. It has wood and 2 long steel things. She found her gourd and she was still thirsty and she began to drink. "Ooh," tooted Chrysanthemum. Go on. Soika had her back to her. She was too busy to pay attention. Ooh, ooh, tooted Chrysanthemum again. Soika went on drinking. This is wrong, thought Chrysanthemum. How could I look her in the eye if she won't turn around? Chrysanthemum continued to toot until at last Soika turned around and noticed the diesel rail car. She said, and came towards her, still gulping, and wondered what she was. Said Chrysanthemum feebly. Why doesn't she run away? The guard in the Yama tried to shoo her away. She wouldn't stay shooed. As soon as they turned away, she came back. Soika was a most inquisitive yokai. Go on, said her driver. She's harmless. Yes, said Chrysanthemum unhappily. You know she's harmless, and I know she's harmless. But does she know? Besides, look at her horns. If I bumped into her, she might hurt them. The others wouldn't like that. Soika came close and sniffed at Chrysanthemum. Ooh, she said, backing hastily. Ichihiro was surprised to find Chrysanthemum back once more at the big station. The passengers told him about the Oni. He chuckled. Onis always run away if you toot and look them in the eye, eh, Chrysanthemum? Chrysanthemum said nothing. Oh well, said Ichihiro. We live and learn. I better chase her for you, I suppose. He clanked away. But Soika took no notice of Ichihiro's whistle when he got there. She didn't move until Ichihiro whooshed her with steam. Then Ichihiro shooed her along the track to where Eki and Yugi were waiting. Chrysanthemum had an exhausting day. Ichihiro and Kiyoshi met her on their journeys, and though they never mentioned Oni, they gave her pitying looks. It made her so cross. Her last journey ended at the top station on Ichihiro's branch line. Raisin and Tui were on the platform. Suddenly, one of them came running with a glass stein. Look, said Tui. I've got a pint of beer from where the Onis live. I think it tastes super, don't you? The two moon rabbits shared and drank happily. Ah, said Chrysanthemum. Keep your old Oni alcohol. And she scuttled away to find a shed. Kenta and Hiroto were miserable. There had been an upsurge in traffic recently, and some of the tender engines were becoming lonely when all of the other tank engines went off to run the branch lines of Gensokyo. There was more work to do, and they had to fetch their own coaches. The big engines thought they were too important to fetch coaches. Akemi grumbled too. We get no rest, they all said. But the nearby yokai laughed. You're lazy and slack, they answered. Altogether, the engines were causing Remilia Scarlet a great deal of trouble. The shed in Kappa Valley has a turntable. Nidori made them so engines can be turned around because it is dangerous for big engines to go fast backwards. Little tank engines like Ichihiro don't need turntables. They can go just as well backwards and forwards. But to hear Hiroto talk, he thought that Nidori and Remilia gave him a tender just to show how important he was. You don't understand, little Ichihiro. We tender engines have a position to keep up. It doesn't matter where you go, but we are important. From Remilia to make us go shunt and fetch coaches and go some of those dirty sidings. It's an improper thing. Ichihiro laughed and left with Annie and Carrera Brew. Disgraceful! Hiroto hissed as he ran backwards onto the turntable. Aya Shimamera was nearby and was having a slow news day. She decided to play a trick on the engines. Aya made the sheds a windy place, and if he didn't stop in the right place, he put the turntable out of balance and made it difficult to turn. Today, Hiroto was in a bad temper and the wind was blowing fiercely. His driver tried to make him stop in the right place, but Hiroto wasn't trying. The firewoman tried to turn the handle, but Hiroto's weight and the strong winds prevented him. It's no good, they said at last. Your big tender upsets the balance. If you're a little tank engine, it might be alright. Now you have to take your next train backwards. There were some fairies on the platform.
Look, it's a new tank engine!
One of them said.
It's only Hiroto back to front.
Hello, called Ichihiro. Playing tank engine, I see? Sensible engine. Take my advice, scrap your tender and have a nice bunker. Even Akemi laughed when he saw him. Take care, hissed Hiroto. You might stick too. No fear, chuckled Akemi. I'm not so fat as you. I mustn't stick, thought Akemi. He stopped just in the right place to balance the table. It can now swing easily. Aya began to make the wind blow hard once more, and Hiroto arrived to see everything in time. Akemi turned much too easily, and the wind made him spin like a top. He couldn't stop. Well, 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 laughed Hiroto. Are you playing roundabouts? Poor Akemi rolled off quite giddy into the sheds without saying a word. The next day, Aya's tricks were in the Bun Bun Maru newspaper. The article talked of spinning turntables and backwards engines. Hiroto and Akemi were most annoyed. That night, the three engines held an indignation meeting. It's shameful to treat tender engines like this. Hiroto has to go backwards, and people think he's a tank engine. Akemi spins like a top, and everybody laughed at us. On top of that, Remilia Scarlet has a shunt and dirty sidings. Ugh! The engines were upset at Remilia for having to shunt their own trains, but Aya made them madder by embarrassing them in the daily paper. Listen, said Hiroto. He whispered something to the other engines. We'll do it tomorrow. Aya-chan will look silly. The engines decided to cause an incident. Hiroto, Akemi, and Kenta had planned to get back at Aya Shimameru after making them look bad. Hiroto shunted his coaches. Instead of grumbling about being a tender engine forced to shunt, he mumbled what he was going to do to Aya. His first train was to the Moria Shrine. He knew someone at the shrine who had some dirt on the tank. I'll ask Sanae, he thought. Guard whistle blew, and the first step of getting back at her began. Hiroto told Sanae what had happened, and she giggled. I have some pictures of Aya from one of our feasts, she chuckled. She went up to the shrine and back and handed his driver some snapshots. These, Sanae said, are from one we had recently. She got really drunk and made a move on Kaneko-san. In the nude? Asked Hiroto's driver. Yes, chortled Sanae, and she left. For Hiroto, it was time to run around his train and go back. Much in the manner in how Devereux had made fun of Ahiru, Hiroto told stories to the fairies.
This'll be fun,
said Cyrano after Hiroto had told her and Deusei a falsehood of what happened when the pictures were taken.
We have to tell Sunny and the others,
giggled Deusei. Oh, how the tables have turned, said Hiroto darkly. The rumors spread like a Californian forest fire, and by the next day, everyone in Gensokyo knew about Aya's romp with Kaneko. But Aya knew nothing of this until Hayate Himikaido, her rival, came to rub the rumor in her face. What are you doing here? Asked Aya. Oh, nothing, said Hayate. Just to rub in your face that I don't need to do favors for gods. What do you mean? What I mean is, and Hayate told her everything. Everybody knows this, said Aya. She was on the verge of crying. Yes, you slut. Aya yelled and screamed to get her out, and after Hayate had finally left her home, Aya began to sob quietly. Shiro was shunting empty trucks at the Moria Shrine station yard. He was about to shunt a goods van when he heard Aya weeping inside. Leave me alone, she said. Shiro wondered why until he remembered the rumor. You can tell me. I don't believe that silly rumor, he said. Aya climbed out of the van and told him about Hayate and the looks everybody gives her now. We can try and see if Reimu can clear your name, Shiro finally said, and we can put an end to this despicable thing. Aya and Shiro arrived at the Hakuroi Shrine Station. and they told Reimu about the rumor and asked her if she could do anything about it. "I'll get Marissa," Reimu replied. "There is only one way to stop these things," she then said. The next day, a great big yokai incident happened the next day, and all the engines had to stay in the sheds. "We don't have to shunt trucks," chortled Akemi. "And we don't have to fetch our coaches," put in Hiroto. Sure was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "Well, if Remilia hadn't made us tender engine shunt, none of this would have happened," hissed Hiroto. "You started that rumor?" said Sharo sternly. "I have made us look silly. She made people think I was a common tank engine, and Akemi spun helplessly. What was an engine supposed to do?" "We don't start rumors about people being whores or one thing, but Sharo, but nothing, Hiroto." Silence fell in the engines. "I'm telling the Scarlet," whispered a voice. No one knew who said it, but Hiroto and Akemi might have thought it was Shiro. Once the incident had passed and Aya's name was cleared, the Scarlet Controller met the three big tender engines in the shed. "You three shall stay here until you are wanted. Aya's a fine Tengu. What you did was petty, heartless, and above all, dishonorable," she scolded. "I'm sorry." "Don't say you're sorry, Hiroto. I heard it was you who started this, and as such, you are withdrawn until further notice. As for your driver, however, I have talked with the other Kappas, and she is banished in disgrace." And with that, the Scarlet Controller left. Hiroto, Kenta, and Akemi all felt sorry for themselves. It had been weeks since Hiroto had made Aya look bad in revenge for humiliating him and Akemi by messing about with the turntable. Kenta and Akemi were able to get out of the shed by now, but Hiroto sat cold and lonely on a siding beside the works. That is, until the Scarlet Controller showed up. "I see, Hiroto," she began. "You have been here for quite some time. I hope you have learned your lesson." "Yes, sir," replied Hiroto meekly. "I have decided to bring you back into service. Any longer, and you would have been recycled for parts." Hiroto was too depressed to care about that remark. "Your driver will arrive shortly. Your first train is a slow goods," said Remilia. When Hiroto brought the last portion of his train to the human village terminus yard, the other engines saw him. They were amazed. "I thought you didn't like goods trains," gasped Kenta. Hiroto said nothing. He shunted his train without complaining and arranged his next train, which happened to be another goods train. Akemi was shocked too. "Come on, Hiroto. I know you never liked goods trains." "I know," sighed Hiroto. "I've never seen an engine that was so boisterous before, but now so quiet," said Akemi. Ichihiro noticed that too. "Yeah, but unlike you and Kenta, he was withdrawn from service by Remilia Scarlet. It's the closest an engine on this railway has ever been scrapped." The engines were stunned. Then Ichihiro spoke up. "Back in my time on the island of Sodor, there were engines that escaped from being scrapped." "Yes, Ichihiro-san," replied Ichihiro, "but they lived in a place in the outside world where steam engines were being replaced by diesels. The Scarlet Controller knows better than to have one of us scrapped." The next day, Akemi was told to pull the express by Remilia. "Sir, why isn't Hiroto pulling the express?" asked Akemi. "Because he is on probation. If he causes any more trouble, I'll think of something," she replied. "Besides, Kaneko and Suwaku's shrine's ticket money is still being siphoned due to their implication in the whole incident." And with that, Remilia left. Hiroto was depressed. He pulled his trains without question and didn't complain. "I'm worried," said Chihiro at the big station. "Me too," replied Sho. "Ever since Remilia sidelined him, he seems off." Hiroto was resting on a nearby siding. He had shunted his next goods trains, with 2 tankers filled with flammable liquid were at the front and at the station platform. Hiroto was mumbling to himself sadly when he heard the screeching of brakes. "Help! Help!" screamed Akemi as he barreled into the station's throat. "Hiroto, do something!" yelled Ichihiro. "Akemi will crash in those tankers!" "You're right!" said Hiroto with great enthusiasm. Hiroto jerked forwards off the siding and onto the main line. "I can't stop!" said Akemi. Instead of crashing into the tankers, Akemi smashed into Hiroto. Akemi and the coaches derailed and spread over the tracks. Hiroto's boiler was badly dented. Hiroto was in great pain, but once he started hearing the cheers from the engines and the passengers he saved, he was most relieved. Once the breakdown train was called, Remilia went to see Hiroto. "That was pretty brave of you, Hiroto, to sacrifice yourself to save a bunch of humans," said Remilia. "It was the only thing I could do," grunted Hiroto. "Once you have your boiler mended, I have a treat for you." "What's that?" asked Hiroto. "You will get to pull the express once more." Hiroto was delighted. "I'll promise I'll work hard, sir." "I bet you will," laughed Remilia. Hiroto is proud and happy to be pulling the express again. He now knows that it's wrong to ruin a person's reputation. He's back to his old self again, but take that as you may. It was a beautiful day in... What is it, Sakura? "Your voice sounds funny, mistress," replied Sakura. "My voice does not." Suddenly, Remilia realized what was happening. "I sound like Stephen," exclaimed the lolly vampire. The Stephen she was referring to was Sir Stephen Topham Hatt, the controller of the Northwestern Railway. The Gensokyo Railway and the NWR almost merged into one big railway until some neo-Nazis intervened and killed one of the Kappa bureaucrats in charge of the merger. But it wasn't as fruitless, as the Gensokyo Railway had trackage rights from Vickerstown to Tidmouth and got some of the best ballast in the world out of it. "You really do sound like a fat Englishman," chortled Sakura. "I'll go and see Aaron later today." "But you have to give the engines their morning orders." "Shit," shouted Remilia. Remilia soon arrived at the sheds. "Ichihiro, I need you to take a goods train to Yente. A hero can take a morning passenger run." Ichihiro giggled. "Sir, you sound like that fat controller guy." "I am no fat controller. If that was the case, Yuriko would be doing my job right now." Remilia gave out the rest of the orders and then promptly left. Remilia waited in her office inside the big station. She had missed the first passenger train to Yente and was waiting for another. "I wish I hadn't cut those runs on that branch line," said Remilia, her voice still sounding like the stout gentleman. It was a long while before the next train to Yente came by. She went onto the platform and was about to board when Ichihiro asked, "Is that voice of yours still weird?" "God damn it," replied Remilia. "The last thing I want is for my charisma to break down because of you asking that in public." Some of the humans on the platform thought it was funny, but Remilia flashed her spell cards to show she was serious. Ichihiro soon arrived at the Yente station and Remilia disembarked. She walked in through the gates and saw Henry Blake, the ghost surgeon of Yente. "What are you in here for, little girl?" asked Henry. "I want to see Aaron about my voice." Even Henry thought it was funny. This made Remilia cross. "The comments I get all bleeding day aren't funny. It was fun the first time, but the poor writing thinks that it's repeating it makes it funny." "What poor writing?" asked Henry, oblivious to the broken third wall. Remilia sighed. "Ugh." The wait wasn't long, and she got to be seen by Aaron. Remilia spoke, and Aaron knew what it was. "You have laryngitis, Miss Scarlet. That's why you sound so... English." Remilia pretty much gave up at this point and didn't reply. Aaron walked away and came back with a bottle of pills. "Take one in the morning and another in the evening. And once they're all out, call me and we'll go from there." "Thank God," said Remilia. 2 weeks later, and Remilia's voice had returned to normal. However, "Excuse me, mistress, but I think I caught your laryngitis," said Sakura. "I need to go to Yente." Remilia thought it was funny. "You sound like that James Bond fellow." She laughed, and all Sakura could do was sigh. "Oh well, would you like your tea shaken, not stirred?" Sakura began to enjoy her Sean Connery voice for the time being, but she will get some medicine from Yente later on. Well, well, well," chuckled Remilia. "What goes around comes around." And Sakura had to agree. It was a cool, brisk day in Gensokyo, and Remilia Scarlet was in need of a new railway inspector, as one of them had quit recently. There was only one person who wanted the job. "Eki, no," said Remilia. "Please," begged Eki Shiki. "Do you know anything about running a railway such as this? I mean, you don't, and you're the controller, but I'm not one to lecture." Remilia rolled her eyes at the remark. "True, but no," she replied. "But judging the dead has gotten so tiresome, and I want to try something new." Eki begged and begged and begged, but Remilia stonewalled every time. That is, until she couldn't stonewall no longer. "Fine, fine, you're hired." Eki Shiki was ecstatic. Thank you, Oni-sama. Just get out of my mansion. Remilia had enough for her. When she left, Remilia asked Sakura Izuyoi, how in the hell does Kamachi put up with her? Ekishiki Yamaxandu's first task of her job was to check out Maybach. He complained of a pain in his camshaft, and she was called to inspect. You're the railway inspector? Gasped Maybach. I am, and what's wrong? There's a pain in my camshaft. Ekishiki, knowing nothing about diesel engines, or any engine as a matter of fact, decided it wasn't a mechanical fault, but rather a moral fault. You aren't being lazy and uncooperative, lectured Eki. This is the kind of crap I send people to hell for. But it hurts, complained Maybach. But nothing, you ignorant loco, replied Eki. Maybach didn't want to argue and left his siding. He got just enough onto the main line for it came to an abrupt stop. Maybach had broken down. Somebody just fix him, said Eki. You mean send for an engine to bring him to the works? Said a nearby Kappa. I know what I meant, you lech. Ekishiki spent the next few days inspecting the railway, but really she just lectured. She lectured the engines, she lectured the drivers and staff, she even lectured the passengers. By the end of the week, everybody had had enough of her antics. Disgusting, said Akemi. Despicable, put in Kenta. Disgraceful, finished Hiroto. That blasted Yama's done nothing but tell us off about her morals, said Ichihiro crossly. What does she think she is? Christian? Said Hiroto. What's Christian? Asked Ichihiro. I don't know. Some gappy stew in the station was talking about it, explained Hiroto. My driver hates her, complained Akemi. Drivers, firemen, signalwomen, and all the station staff all despise the new railway inspector. So, with the permission of their crews, the engines went on strike. The Scarlet Controller was in her office, listening to the noise outside. Oh, what a nuisance humans are, she moaned. When the station master walked in. There's trouble in the shed, sir. I already know how that story ends. So Topham Hatt bought Percy and... Not the Railway Series story, sir. I meant there's trouble in the sheds at Kappa Valley. Oh, I'll go see, said Remilia. Remilia went to the sheds and saw that Eki was already browbeating the engines. You all are arrogant, ignorant, morally duelist, mentally dangerous, dishonorable, and... Eki Shiki Yamaxandu! Cried Remilia. What is it, Rem? My engines and staff work hard. I send the lazy ones away. I'm not lazy. Stuff it, Eki. For your incompetence, you are fired. But bugger off! You're fired! Eki stormed off to find Kamachi, and all the engines cheered for their controller. Thank you, Remilia-sama, said Ichihiro. Thank nothing. You all should be working by now. When you have a grievance, next time, talk to me. The rest of the day, the engines worked hard and they made up for lost time. What about Ekishiki? She went back to Higan, leaving behind the stench of bad manners, some judgmental judgment, and a battered Kamachi Onizuka. On the day after Christmas is a day known as Boxing Day. Even though the Scarlet Sisters are more Romanian than British, they still observe the holiday, and they all celebrate it by changing roles. Do I have to? Whined Patchouli. But thou must, replied Remilia. This Boxing Day, however, was going to be different, as Patchouli swapped roles with Remilia. But mistress, it's cold outside, and the smoky engines make my asthma act up, and stuff it, Patchy. Just do my job. Plus, it's very fun to tell the engines what to do. But soon, Patchouli caved in. I'll do it. Patchouli made her way to the sheds. The ground was covered in ice since Kappa Valley got a freezing rain instead of snow like in the human village. Hello, Patch. Before Ichihiro could say anything, Patchouli said, Ichihiro, take your normal train Siente! Hiroto, take your expresses not due till later due to storms in almost one breath, Patchouli gave out all the engines, their revised timetables, and left immediately. "What was that all about?" asked Ichihiro. "I don't know what's into her," replied Ichihiro, trying to comprehend what had happened. Patchouli had holed herself inside Remilia's office in the big station. She was watching Boko no Pico with the same reasons anyone would watch The Room. The heavy snows had left the yard in chaos. Passenger trains were slow, and due to a lack of usable plows, Maybach and Cobol had to use heavy ballast trucks to push the snow off the track. However, Akemi was hauling a goods train when he hit a large chunk of snow and promptly derailed. Patchouli was still in her office when she heard what had happened. The station master told her, and she just froze. "Fine, I'll call the breakdown train myself," said the station master crossly. The cleanup was taking a while, and trains had to be diverted. Patchouli didn't feel up to it and continued to watch anime while the passengers outside began to complain. Ichihiro was in the shed by the big station when Patchouli walked by. "Hello, Banshee," he said. Hi?" she said meekly. "Patchouli, what are you gonna do with Akemi's accident?" "I don't know. Boxing Day sucks because I'm always having to do something I hate." "And what's that?" asked Ichihiro. And Patchouli told him of the time she switched roles with Hong Meiling and had to put up with random humans and Marissa Kurisam, and that one other Boxing Day when she switched roles with Sakura Izayoi right before a big dinner party. "Every time I switch with somebody, it always ends up with me having to be social. I just want to sit in my library and read doujins." Ichihiro sighed. "Well, I know your hikikomori doesn't want to come out of her comfort spot, but sometimes we have to do things we don't want to." "But that's what everybody tells me. What's so different this time?" "Batchy, you happen to switch roles with the controller of an entire railway. When you don't do the things you need to do, passengers can't go on trains if they don't arrive, cargo goes undelivered, and gets lost even if it does go on a goods run. Patchouli-chan, you are the most important person working on the Gensokyo Railway system, so there's great urgency for you to do what you need to do, not just for you, but for the Kappa Valley Industries, the Human Village passengers, the Shrine Maiden's faith and donations, and for Gensokyo as a whole." Patchouli now knew the full extent of her role as controller. "Thanks, Ichihiro. Now I have to do something," she said. "Well, keep calm and carry on." "I will, thanks," said Patchouli as she ran back to the station building. For the rest of the day, the trains ran like clockwork. The delays became fewer and farther between and came closer to the original schedule. Freight and passengers now flowed in and out of the station freely, and Patchouli learned when thou must, thou thine must. Shogatsu, or the Japanese New Year, is a special time of year for those in Gensokyo. The two shrines at both ends of the main line hold special festivals, but after a ticket price war and an accident at the Hakurai Shrine Station, that put a stop to the Moria-Hakurai feud. That is, until the Scarlet Controller went to put on a special festival to be held at the big station, and the two shrine maidens, Reimu Hakurai and Sanae Kochiya, argued about who would do the festival. However, Reimu and Sanae had a shouting match right in the station yard, on the track. No trains could go through until the fight was broken up. "Flat-chested hag," dissed Sanae. "Whore," shouted Reimu. "Destitute slut," retorted Sanae. "You and your mother suffer from having chasms for peep peep," whistled Shiro. "Enough is enough." "She call me flat," said Reimu. "She trades sex for donations," combated Sunny. "Will you two shut up?" Shiro yelled. "No Miku would ever have conduct like this. You two should be ashamed." Shiro's words worked. "Fine," said Reimu, "but we all know who's doing the Shogatsu festival." "It's me," peeped Sanae. "Fuck you," replied Reimu. Shiro whistled again. "Get out of my sight and off the track. You two have caused enough confusion and delay." The Mikus buggered off and the trains ran like usual. "You know why I called you two here?" said Remilia. Before Sanae and Reimu could dare speak, Remilia continued, "I am to clear up the mystery of who's holding the Shogatsu celebrations. That is, to say it's the both of your shrines." The two shrine maidens were shocked, but I figured Reimu would need the donations and Kaneko would get the faith, and you two could benefit from the railway coffers. The two shrine maidens erupted in an argument about who did what, And who said that? And this made Remilia cross. You two act like children, said the lolly. You either do this together or you get nothing. And on that ultimatum, the two made a truce. Sanae and Reimu worked at the station and didn't say a word to each other. The two looked tense, said Ichihiro. I know, replied Shiro, and I don't like it. Hey, Reimu-chan, cried Ichihiro. What? Growled Reimu. I see what you mean. The two has to learn with each other, said Shiro, or things will get ugly. Shiro was right, as on the day of New Year's Eve, a spell card duel had broken out in the sky above the station. No train could get in or out. God damn it, said Remilia. Now she was crosser than cross. She was mad. Once the duel had ended in a draw, and before the two could get into fisticuffs, Remilia ordered them into her office. That's it, you two. You're finished, and so's this Shogatsu thing. But, now buts, and as for your behavior, I'm putting an 80% tariff on all your tickets. It'll be cheaper to buy the railway than to ride to your shrine, said Remilia. The two Mikas pleaded. But please, I'll go bankrupt, said Reimu. Kanako will kill me and feed me to the yokai, said Sanae. That's what you get for being such assholes to each other. The two were ashamed. Unless you two get along. How? They asked. You can do the festival if you work as a driver and firewoman. I'll assign you the engine later, answered Remilia. It was New Year's Day, and the festivities went like clockwork, and all the engines were there. Nice of them to make up and do this, said Ichihiro. I'm curious to know how this was achieved, replied Shiro. Are you sure you're ready, Sanae? Asked Shiro. I'm sure, she replied, but instead of operating the regulator, she opened the reverser and Shiro lurched backwards into the turntable well. Ow! Said Shiro. I should have been the driver, said Reimu. Agreed, finished Sanae. Finally, the two could agree.